Senator Abetz.
All right, thank you, Chair. Ms Guthrie, you're welcome. Can I ask, do you agree that the ABC has a legal obligation not to favour one viewpoint over another?
Well, we certainly have an obligation under the Charter and under our editorial policies, as Mr Sunderland talked about, to have accuracy, impartiality and diversity of perspectives.
And in relation to my question, do you agree that the ABC has a legal obligation not to favour one point of view over another?
I'm not quite sure what. I've already answered, I think, what I think our legal obligation is, which is our legal obligation is under the Act and the editorial policies to comply with those policies and to present news and information with due impartiality and diversity of perspectives, and not to favour one perspective over another.
Thank you. Not to favour one perspective over another. Thank you very much. Can I ask you whether, since you've taken on the role, you have made any observations about ABC Radio and Radio National in relation to that particular issue, and that is the issue of bias and favouring one point of view over another?
I don't believe that I have seen that.
Sorry, that you...
I don't believe that there is such a bias or a favouring of one perspective or another in the course of Radio National.
So I shocked myself when I found that the Fairfax media itself printed an article by Jonathan Holmes, the former anchor of ABC's Media Watch, that actually made this allegation against ABC Radio and Radio National. So it's no coalition senator making this point. It is ABC Media Watch's former anchorman in Fairfax Media confirming to the readers that there was this unfortunate bias, and I refer your attention to the article in the Sydney Morning Herald of the 6th of April 2016, in which he said, and I quote, "It is also undeniable that the ABC's capital city radio presenters come across overwhelmingly as leaning more to the left than the right. I say undeniably, but senior ABC managers for decades have chosen, if not to deny it, then to ignore it, and they've certainly failed to do anything about it." And can I ask Ms Guthrie, will you join that sad list of ABC managers over the decades, or will you actually do something about it?
Senator, is that a question?
Yes, it is. It's got a question mark after it. I would have thought you would have understood that. Are you going to do anything about it?
Well,
or are you going to join that sad list?
I disagree with the premise of the question then.
Sorry?
Senator, I disagree with the premise of the question, because the premise of the question assumes that there has been some bias in the previous managing directors, and I don't believe that's true.
All right. Even if you reject the premise that ABC managers for decades have chosen, if not to deny it, then to ignore it, and they've certainly... Are you right there, Senator?
Well, it's an opinion piece.
Are you right there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good, thank you. And they've certainly failed to do anything about it. So you reject that. Can I ask, do you reject Mr Holmes's observation after many years as an ABC anchorman of Media Watch that it is undeniable that the ABC's capital radio presenters come across overwhelmingly as leaning more to the left than the right?
Well, that is an opinion with which I disagree.
So you reject that as well?
Yes.
So and what about Radio National? That's straight down the middle as well, I suppose. Doesn't favour one point of view over another.
Does.
Sorry?
I don't believe it does.
Senator Whish-Wilson, you don't have to... Senator Abetz.
Look,
some examples.
These are not my allegations. These are allegations printed in the Fairfax media, written by the ABC's former anchorman of Media Watch, not my allegations.
Senator
the
Abetz,
ABC.
ignore the objections from Senator Whish-Wilson.
No, they are allegations of left-wing bias.
Is there a
They
question
are
before
very clear.
the ABC, or are you about to ask another one?
And then it looks as though, Ms Guthrie, you may have been captured because Mr Holmes continues to say if Mark Scott's successor, Michelle Guthrie, decides she wants to tackle this issue, she'll have her work cut out. She'll be facing an entrenched culture within the ABC. And looks as though they've already got you.
Is that a comment?
Which is, well, it was editorialising, I agree. Can I take you to question number 57 from February 2016 of the estimates?
I think Senator Abetz should withdraw that comment. That was unparliamentary. He was clearly reflecting on Ms Guthrie's character, saying she's been captured by the left wing within the Labor, within the ABC.
Freudian slip.
Well, yeah,
within the
ABC. I think you should withdraw that statement. That's on Hansard.
I acknowledge that Senator Abetz's comment was in the form of a statement rather than a question. I don't think it was unparliamentary, but I would remind Senator Abetz that we're here to ask questions, not to make statements.
I'm just noting that this is the former ABC anchorman making these comments in Fairfax media. Not me at all.
But note in the form of a question, please.
And he went on to observe that she, referring to yourself, Ms Guthrie, will need to consider that those of right-wing opinions long since stopped listening to large chunks of ABC radio, especially Radio National's output, and will be very hard indeed to attract back. Do you agree with that observation by the ABC's former anchorman of Media Watch?
No, I do not.
Right, you've got a lot of disagreements with Mr Holmes in that case. Can we move on to question number 57, question on notice from last estimates in February 2016. It follows on from Senator Hume's questioning about ABC's portrayal of matters Nauru. Do you have that in front of you?
Sorry, we don't have the February transcript in front of me.
No questions on notice. We don't need a transcript.
Not for February. I have those for
February.
May, but I don't have those for February, I'm afraid.
Written on the 12th of February 2016. You don't have...
I don't have them in front of me, I'm afraid.
It refers to the false allegations that were aired on the ABC about a 5-year-old, and I dare say the people at the table will know what the issue I'm referring to, where certain matters were aired. And when I asked on how many radio and TV stations stating which and how often was this false report broadcast by the ABC, we were told very interoperable, I agree, 5 versions of the original story, and then I'm given quite a detailed answer. But then I asked later on how many occasions has the ABC broadcast an apology and correction for airing the false allegations? Would you agree with me that the apologies were aired a lot less than the actual allegations?
Senator, I haven't got the benefit of having that in front of me, so I must apologise for that. So I can't reflect on the numbers that you have in front of you, but it may well be the case that, depending on how far and wide that the correction was made on the original program or in the original location, and may not have been made on every outlet right across where it may have gone to air. That may well be the case.
And is that not just a complete failure by the ABC? Surely, if a false broadcast is made, as the national broadcaster hopefully setting standards, would you not at least broadcast an apology and retraction as often and on each individual station on which you broadcast the false allegation. Why wouldn't you do that just as a matter of common decency?
I guess it's a little more complicated than that would be my
It
first
always is
answer.
with the ABC, but tell us about the complication.
I'm happy to, Senator. It depends. Our complaints, if you look at our editorial policy on this, the most important thing about our complaints, and our corrections, is that they are effective and they do the job. Now, it is not a simple matter that if something is said on air, the correction must necessarily be on air. It depends on the nature of the correction, the time that's elapsed between it. I see you shaking your head, Senator. Do you want me to stop or do you want me to keep going?
Or the gobbledygook that's coming out, if it's to
Well,
be,
maybe I'll just leave it there.
if it is to be an effective
Yes.
apology, surely if you broadcast something on a local radio station, then to be effective as an absolute minimum, you must go on air on that local radio station.
Not necessarily, Senator.
Putting it online, which half a dozen people look at is effective.
Not necessarily, Senator.
Or can you explain to me how it is effective by not putting it on air on that radio station in which the ABC broadcast the mischief?
Sure, happy to. It depends upon the nature of the error, the time that's elapsed between that broadcast and when it's been determined and realised that an error has been made.
If I may,
Sure.
focus attention, let's talk about this particular one, about a 5-year-old allegedly being raped, which we now agree was a false assertion, a pretty ugly assertion that would horrify, I would imagine, 100% of your listening audience.
Sure.
Wouldn't they like to know that on a bit of further research, that was in fact false, it was wrong,
Absolutely.
and therefore they can have their concerns and fears allayed? Wouldn't that be the only effective way of communicating to that particular audience?
You need to make a decision about where and when and how they're most likely going to come across that correction, where it's a correction of crucial information. There were large parts of that story which remained valid and important and accurate. There were certain parts which were wrong and needed to be corrected. I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
And our aim is to effectively communicate that to the audience. Now, sometimes it is appropriate to go straight back on the same program at the same time of the day and assume that exactly the same people are going to be listening. But that's not necessarily going to be the case. People don't listen at the same time every day. Sometimes
I fully agree with that, but not broadcasting at all can not in any way, shape or form be described as an effective methodology.
But I've got some information now. We did broadcast it on many of our biggest and most popular.
On many, but not
Yes.
all.
Sure.
And that's my point, not all.
Senator,
why not?
Can I suggest that we are in complete agreement on the importance of effective corrections that reach as many people as possible? All I'm trying to suggest to you, and I don't want to speak gobbledygook, and I don't want to overcomplicate the matter, but these are matters for judgment on how best and how effectively to do that. And all I'm suggesting to you, Senator, is it's not necessarily the case that identifying every outlet that it appeared on and saw and was heard on, and then at exactly the same time of the day, some days later, making this is necessarily the most effective or best way to do it. There are a range of other measures, and we do the best we can, and we make the best judgments we can, don't always get it right, to effectively communicate openly those corrections. That's the message I'm trying to get across to you, Senator.
Yes, and now coming to the specifics, if a local radio station broadcast a mischief, a falsehood that you accept is wrong, how can you say it's effective communication to correct that falsehood and mischief by not broadcasting anything at all at any time on that particular outlet?
Well, certainly it went across all of our national outlets, the 7 p.m. TV news.
Yes,
News
I've got
24,
the answer in front of me.
7:30. I now have it in front of me too,
Yeah,
Senator.
oh, good.
And on ABC Radio News. Now, ABC Radio News has taken on every single one of our local, regional and national radio outlets. So a correction on ABC Radio News goes across all of those outlets.
Because, well,
And anyone who listens to our news will hear that correction.
Can I ask you to have a look at the answer to A then? 1A. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down, we were told the local radio network.
Yes.
Right? And then on F, in relation to on-air apologies and corrections, can you show me where it tells me that it was broadcast on, to quote, the local radio network?
Look,
it wasn't, was it?
Thank you. So now that I have the detailed information in front of me, it appears that this may be a simple misunderstanding because the...
Like the original broadcast, no doubt.
No, perhaps different. If you look at that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line you referred me to...
In A or F?
In A. Sorry, it's later. Local radio network.
Yep.
The full phrase is on ABC radio news across the local radio network.
Right. That is
so
where the
F,
mischief was
the correction
broadcast.
F, when it refers to ABC radio news, is identical. Perhaps the problem here is that it hasn't been expressed in precisely the same way. But to talk about ABC radio news across the local radio network and ABC radio news is in fact the same thing.
Well, we have different answers. And then, if that is the case, can you tell us about why we have 5 versions of the original story? That's going back to A. 5 versions of the original story. How many versions of the apology did we make? Just the one?
The reason there would have been 5 versions, I would hypothesise, and again, without going into great detail, is that there was a long story on 7:30. There was an online version of that. There was a shorter radio version that was made. There may have been more than one shorter radio version that was made. And there may have been a piece for AM. So you could easily imagine. Now, if you are correcting the salient facts, you are going to correct the salient facts that were errors in every single one of those stories, and you are going to broadcast. So you don't need to create 5 different versions of the correction to correct the salient matters across those key areas. So on this case, again, I apologise if there's a lack of clarity in the nature of this written response from February this year, but on this occasion it would appear that a correction, perhaps because the error was identified so quickly, was broadcast across all of the relevant networks. But I would nonetheless add and caution that that is not necessarily always the most effective way to achieve the outcome that we all want.
In relation to question B, where I asked who was responsible for allowing this false broadcast to go to air, we've got one of these greasy pig type answers where you can't catch anybody. You think you've got hold of them and they slip through your hands, because we're given the answer, responsibility for the error is shared among several unidentified people, including the reporter and editorial managers. Does the buck stop ever, anytime, anywhere, with anybody in the ABC ever?
Senator, the whole
Does
point...
somebody take responsibility and say, yep, it's me, I'm responsible?
The whole point of upward referral in an organisation like the ABC is to ensure that there are a number of people involved who need to take responsibility for errors when errors occur. And it would be inaccurate and misleading for us to suggest on the vast majority of occasions that there is one identifiable individual who has full responsibility. Now, to give you this example is a perfect one. We all know who the reporter was. The reporter went to air with that story. That reporter, it would be inappropriate for us to suggest that reporter takes sole blame when there is a producer who's engaged in viewing that. There's the second pair of eyes who looks at a story. There's other people involved in the discussions and the meetings. There is quite often upward referral to my team for advice and input. And it is absolutely appropriate that we reflect that in our responses to you, that there are a number of people. Our system, whenever we make an error, it's because our system failed us. And there are rarely situations where one person is responsible. It's as simple as that.
And in this one?
In this one, absolutely the case.
So
there was a producer...
how many people were responsible in this chain of events that allowed this mischief to be broadcast?
Look, again, I'm not in a position to give you a precise number on that, but I would certainly be able to tell you that that program team, and my recollection is that this came from the National Reporting Team, and it was produced for 7:30. So you would have the reporter, you would have a researcher that worked with the reporter, you would have the producer of the National Reporting Team, you would have the producer of 7:30 report, you would have any editorial advisor who might have been asked for assistance on various aspects of the story. My recollection of this story was that there was a range of information given from a range of sources, and some of that information was conflated and led to inaccuracies. That there were allegations of sexual assault, there were allegations involving children, and there were errors in the detail. And as soon as those errors, which were quite serious and important, were brought to our attention, we corrected them. The fundamental story contained a lot of information which was valid and useful, but there was an error. And it was an error that we spent some time looking at how we can make sure that we have greater rigour and greater clarity in the way these things are recorded.
See, when I asked what was the source of this false information, I'm told the source of the error was confusion about comments made by a source who spoke to the ABC.
Correct.
Well, as I understand it, people don't speak to the ABC, they speak to individual people within the ABC. It seems as though the socialisation of responsibility just spams out further and further, and nobody actually takes responsibility for what on this occasion was a very, very serious error, mischief and a falsehood. But look, moving on, you said...
Senator, I just do need to add, Senator, I do need to add, just so that you're clear about our view on this, it was an error, it was an inaccuracy, and it was a serious inaccuracy. It was not deliberate, and it wasn't mischief.
Sorry,
It was not deliberate and it was not mischief, which you've characterised it as. I just want to make it clear that we don't consider for an instant that it was mischievous or false. It was inaccurate and it was an error, and a serious one.
I was trying to use a more neutral term than a falsehood or something of that nature.
Well, mischief would suggest intent, Senator. And it's important to put that on the record.
I accept that. I accept that, and I stand corrected on that. And but we are agreed it was a false report. It was wrong. It was incorrect.
It was inaccurate, and it was serious, and we took it seriously.
Yeah. And therefore, decisions about further actions are under consideration. I was told in paragraph E. Have those decisions been made? And if so, what further actions have been undertaken?
I think the summaries, I think the issues that you've seen there...
It's about in the middle of the body of that
I've got it. Thank you, Senator. Yep. Strongly counselled, the person principally responsible, strongly counselled, certainly. The incident being discussed in detail, I can confirm that because I was a party to those discussions. Further
I'm
actions...
only asking about decisions further actions are under consideration. Has the consideration finished, and if so, what further actions, if any, were taken?
Yes, and I think my understanding is that is complete, and that the key thing that flowed from that is what was foreshadowed there, which was the specific training sessions and other sessions being planned. And I can confirm that they have taken place, and they at least partly flowed from this error and the need to make sure that we refined and reiterated and reinforced our processes.
All right, and that obviated my next question, so thank you for that. And Ms Guthrie, I note that in recent times you were looking for diversity of presenters on the ABC to be potentially people of a non-English speaking background. Is that correct?
I think, Senator, what you're referring to is a statement I made to the staff probably the day or very soon after the day I took on the role, really pointing out that I think one of the opportunities that we had at the ABC was to be more reflective of the community in which we operate. And I pointed out that 28% of Australians were born overseas, and it is incumbent on us
important 28%, might I add.
Absolutely, and it's incumbent on us to make sure that our staff are reflective of that diversity, but also that our on-air content and our on-air presenters are also reflective of that diversity.
And look, I welcome that, and I do note as one wag, I think it was Chris Kenny, has noted the number of people with English accents seem to outweigh any other nationality on the ABC. Whether that's correct or not, I don't know, but inquire as to whether any analysis has been done of that which was asserted by Chris Kenny. There seems to be a disproportionate
Senator,
number. That's what he was asserting.
It is something that we are very conscious of across all of our divisions, not just, frankly, for our own employed presenters or on air or other staff, but also the people in which we sort of engage to be interviewed, to be on panels, to be on discussions on programs that aren't employed by the ABC. So I think it is
including
important.
the Q&A panel. It'd be nice to have a bit of balance on that for once. But look, can I finish off? Can I finish off by welcoming your commitment to diversity in relation to people's ethnic backgrounds? Could I also excite your interest, hopefully, to also get some diversity in relation to people's views, as suggested by Jonathan Holmes, not myself, but a former ABC anchorman of Media Watch, to include that in your push for diversity as well. Thank you.